So, how big is God's pinky finger? I asked my mother one day. She stopped washing the dishes, dried her hands on the blue towel, and asked, "What do you mean?" "Well," I said, "Carol's mom told me about God, the big man in the sky, and I want to know how big his pinky finger is." "Why is that?" she asked. "I can't see him, so I figure if I knew how big his pinky finger is, then I'd at least be able to figure out how big he is, and then I might be able to figure out where he is." You see, the problem was that when my friend's mom told me about the big, white-bearded man in the sky, I looked out the window at the blue sky blobbed with clouds, and I could not see him up there among the clouds. Looking out the window with me, she said, "Can you see him? He is up there watching you." I saw blue sky and white clouds. There was no big man in the sky. I looked at my friend to see if she could see God in the sky. Yep, I could see it on her face. She could see him right up there where her mother was pointing. And then her mother said to me, "He is going to punish you for not believing in him. But he is only going to punish you with what you can handle." Perplexed, I left my friend's home, determined to figure out where on earth God was and why I could not see him. My mother, upon hearing this, likely wanted to march across the street and have some choice words with our neighbor, but instead sat down with me. First, she let me know that God was not going to punish me because I did not believe in God. And then she went to help me understand that God wasn't something that you could see. God was more of an idea or a story to help answer questions that people have. She suggested that some people thought that God had set the universe in motion and then had gone off to someplace else and was not too concerned about what we were up to here on earth. In fact, she figured that if there was a God, God was so very far away that we might as well go along with the idea that God did not exist at all. Going along with the idea that God does not exist is a non-religious worldview, according to Marcus Borg, the theologian, in his book, The Heart of Christianity. He says, in a non-religious worldview, there is only the space-time world of matter and energy, and whatever other forces lie behind or beyond this. This understanding of the world was birthed fairly recently during the Enlightenment of the 17th century. The non-religious worldview holds that the world is made up of tiny particles held together by force fields, all operating according to natural laws, which we are learning more and more about through scientific discovery. This worldview is dominant in the Western culture and is thought of as the modern worldview. In a religious worldview, which my friend and her family held, there is more to the world than meets the eye, or what science can detect. There is a non-material layer of reality, which is known in most world religions. This non-layer of reality, or this more, as it was referred to by William James, author and theologian, is known as God, Adonai, Allah, the Tao, Brahman, and others. This notion of more has been shared by all enduring religions. The religious and non-religious worldviews are the broad categories, while each culture refines the worldview based on their religious teachings, immediate surroundings, local stories, and experiences. As human beings, we absorb and pick up our culture's worldview. It is in the air we breathe, in the water we drink. We all learn a worldview. The worldview that we absorb helps us to determine what is real and what is not real. We view everything that we encounter and experience through the lens of our worldview. Marcus Borg says, the internalization of a worldview domesticates reality by imposing a map or grid on it, thus making it familiar. We will entertain and accept, or not entertain and accept, extraordinary notions or reports of extraordinary events to the extent that they fit into our worldview. In the last 3 centuries, the 2 broad foundation worldviews, religious and non-religious, have come together in Western culture. This mingling of worldviews is why our society is wrestling with the notion of God. There is a tug of war going on between the ideas about God that were developed within a religious worldview and attempts to reconcile ideas about God within the non-religious worldview. The modern Western view has no framework for God or more. Through the lens of the non-religious worldview, God becomes the one who created and set into motion the space-time world of energy and matter. In the non-religious worldview, God may occasionally intervene, but mostly intervened during the time of the biblical stories. In the non-religious worldview, God becomes a supernatural being out there somewhere. Experiencing life through the lens of the non-religious worldview, we may find the reality of God problematic. For some, this leads to rejecting the reality of God or to serious doubts about God, and leads to atheism and agnosticism. Steeped in a non-religious worldview, affirmed and supported by my immediate family and childhood congregation, to this day, I have a hard time making any sense of the notion of God. I have a knee-jerk reaction that God can't possibly be real. The reason that I have that reaction is because there's no framework for something more, or a non-material layer, or God in our modern non-religious worldview. However, when I approach the notion of a non-material layer, or more, or God, through the first source of Unitarian Universalism, direct experience, I'm able to suspend my disbelief. We talk about the sources of Unitarian Universalism in our orientation and path to community gatherings, but I've not yet referenced and referred to our sources here from the pulpit. For those who are new here, or those who don't often consider the sources, they're located in the first few pages of the hymnal. Take a look at them sometime. The source I am referring to reads, direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the force that creates and upholds life. When I approach God through direct experience, then I can be in relationship with God. I can be taken in by a fleeting union with something greater, as I notice the sun glinting off the dew of a stained spider's web, or pause to listen to a red-winged blackbird on a cattail. These are moments when I am aware that there is more, and God is very real. Throughout the history of the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, there have been 2 primary ways of thinking about God. These 2 understandings of God can be called supernatural theism and panentheism. Supernatural theism imagines God as a person-like being. This is a God who is far away in the sky with extraordinary powers. This version of God created the universe and set it into motion. This understanding of God is separate from us, is up in heaven or outside of the universe. God intervenes in life on earth from time to time. The supernatural God of Christianity was a key player in the stories described in the Bible, especially Jesus' birth, the miracles, his death, and resurrection. The supernatural God intervenes from time to time today, often in response to prayer. The other way of thinking about God is panentheism. Panentheism roughly translates to everything in God. Rather than a person like God being out there and separate from the universe, God is, as Marcus Borg explains, the encompassing spirit in whom everything that is. The encompassing spirit in whom everything that is. The universe is not separate from God, but in God. Not separate, but in. This idea of God is not a new one, though the word panentheism is only a couple of centuries old. In the Christian Bible, in the book of Acts, Paul explains that God is the one in whom we live and move and have our being. Marcus Borg rephrases this as the encompassing spirit. God is more than everything, even as everything is in God. This God is not only right here, but also more than right here. Later, Borg continues, panentheism sees the presence of God in, with, and under everything. In, with, and under everything. It's not the direct cause of events, but is a presence beneath and within our everyday lives. This panentheist understanding of God is what currently works for me. It explains my lived experience of encompassing spirit in, with, under, and all around. I do not believe in a powerful, person-like supernatural God who is outside of the universe, but I do trust my relationship with God, the encompassing spirit in whom everything that is. I call myself a humanist leaning into God. My humanism is inspired by the Reverend John Dietrich, who I will speak about next week. His words guide me to contemplate the conditions of life, hold reverence for all of life, and strive to enter the world in order that by human effort all life may be improved. Leaning into God gives me the flexibility to learn to trust my direct experience with the divine, working in and among and supporting my life. I need a flexible and encompassing theology, because raised within a strictly non-religious worldview culture where there is no framework for God, it has been a challenge to recognize my direct experience with God. It has been a challenge to recognize my direct experience with God. I would like to close with this poem by Nancy Schaefer, which for me lifts up God's presence right here, but also more than right here. Were I to teach a course on God, I would begin with a plate of persimmons, the sweet, crisp kind, the ones more orange than red, the hard, squat fouillets I eat each November morning on hot wheat cereal with almonds. I would slice the persimmons gently across their fat centers, then hold them out. See their star shape? I would offer them so all might wonder. I would slice brown bosque pears straight down their middles, so the threads of each seam trace wispily down to that rounded place where dark seeds lie, tear-shaped and wet in white, firm flesh. I would hold these halves silently forward, their bottoms smooth in the curves of my palms. I would teach God with plates of pomegranates, both before they were opened and after. I would bring wet washcloths. We would bury our faces and eat all that luminescent purple and red, those clear, bright kernels fitted in tight rows on small, tumbling hills. And all that juice so easily broken, sweet and puckery at once. We would say nothing. I would teach this way, with plates of fruit, a knife, many washcloths, my eyes very large, my mouth mostly silent, so all might eat.